Good afternoon, everybody. It is Wednesday, February 17th, 2021 at 3 p.m., which means it's time for Women and Business. And as you can see, I am in the upstairs studio, which has been rearranged once again. And once again, you can see just a tiny bit of the purple chair over that shoulder. And I'm still working things out, but I think this is a better setup, so I like this better. And you can see my words. We don't want to miss the words. So now I have both my plaques with all the words on them. So we're happy. But I'm really excited to be here with you today. I'm really excited that you're all here with me. And the reason I'm excited is because my guest today is Cassie Green from Graphics Pro magazine. And I love me some editors, and Graphics Pro is the predecessor to printwear, which I have great affection for because I wrote for printwear for many years. So it's fun to have someone from the family here with me today. And Cassie Green is the executive editor for Graphics Pro magazine, a publication that serves the apparel decorating, awards and personalization, and signage and digital printing markets. That's a lot of markets. She was previously the editor for A&E magazine, a role she took over when she was 26 years old, and before that, served as a staff writer for printwear and A&E magazines. In her free time, she does a lot of volunteer work with various organizations and enjoys being a working mom of two energetic boys. We will be talking about the boys later, but I'm going to pop Cassie in here. Hi, Cassie. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited you're here. So I want to talk first of all about the magazine. Now, Graphics Pro is Graphics Pro even a year old yet?
We will be a year old as of June. So we launched in June 2020.
Okay, so I knew that it was fairly old because printwear was around for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, over 30 years.
Graphics Pro is the new version, which is kind of just more expansive to cover the entire industry. Is that an accurate saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a combination of printwear, sign and digital graphics, and A&E magazine. We all came together under one umbrella.
Okay, I'm going to pop up here. If y'all haven't seen the magazine, I'm going to pop up the URL so you can go take a look. But one of the things that I'm very passionate about, we talked about this a little bit before we started the show today, but one of the things I'm really passionate about is getting more women's voices, more female voices out there. So as an editor of a major industry publication, what would you recommend women do if they have something to say or they want to contribute in some way?
So this is actually perfect timing. Our March issue, which is going to mail out on February 22nd, is going to feature several women throughout the graphics industry.
Cool.
So, which is really great. So I really encourage everybody to check that out. But one of the ways women can make their voice heard is just, contacting me or contacting our team at Graphics Pro. If you want to be spotlighted in any way, we do shop profiles. We welcome guest writers. I like having fresh voices, especially women voices. So, at any point, if you feel like there's something you're very passionate about, you want to just write about or anything like that, just drop me a line. I mean, I love to have phone conversations, email conversations, whatever's easiest. So that's really kind of the big way to get your voice heard. Obviously, there are the regular, methods, Facebook, things like that. We have pretty good Facebook group going and things like that. So yeah, just step one, just contact us.
You have a Facebook group going. I did not know that.
Yeah, Graphics Pro.
Okay, I didn't have a banner for that one because, like I said, I didn't know, but that's definitely something to look up. And this is Cassie's email here if you want to write that down, if you have any ideas. But one of the things I also want to talk about, and I do understand that this probably isn't necessarily your area as much, but getting more women to be speakers for shows. Now, NBM has their shows, of course, and like I said, I understand that may not be particularly your bailiwick, but how do we let's ask the bigger question. How do we encourage more women to do that? how is it? I don't even know. I don't even know what the question, I guess the question I'm asking is, how do we get more women to do that? How do we get more women's voices out there? Any thoughts?
I think it's exactly what you and I are doing here today, is talking about it, you know, really providing a platform for women to speak. So, you know, a big fear of mine when I, you know, was young and fresh out of college, was being on video, was being on camera, and just having the confidence to do it. Right. So I think that's probably a fear of other women. I don't want to, you know, put words in their mouth. But
oh, I know it is.
Yeah, right. Well, so sometimes facing your fear and just going out there and doing it. So finding that passion and then pursuing it and saying, you know what, I would love to be a speaker on this webinar, or I would love to participate in this, and just having the confidence to speak up and say, I want to participate. And even if it scares you, sometimes that's a good thing, you know, because it makes you do things and it makes your voice heard. And oftentimes, you know, we women, we have a lot to say, and we have a lot of really amazing things to share with the world, and we need to not be afraid to say it. So,
well, I have to ask you too, because reading your bio here, I'm going to go back to make sure I get it right. You were 26 years old when you became the editor for A&E. That's pretty dang young. And I mean, it's also an interesting phenomenon that most of the editors of the industry publications are or historically have been women. I mean, there's you, there's Adrienne at Screen Print Magazine, there's Teresa Hagel, I believe, who's over at, oh crap, I forgot the name of it. Wearables now. No, not Wearables, Counselor. I don't know. One of those. And then there was Marcia Derryberry over at Impressions for years and years, and then you, and prior to you there was Carly that was at Printwear. I'm just wondering if this industry is more welcoming to female editors, or is it, are there more female editors, and is the profession itself more welcoming?
So that's a really interesting question. And this is speaking purely from my personal observation. I would say, yes, first of all, there are a lot of women editors in the graphics industry. And, you know, I would like to chalk that up to, you know, part of it is just being confident. We know what we're talking about in this industry. We're not afraid to get in there and get our hands dirty. In general, because my very first you know, experience with journalism and editing and things like that was in the newspaper world. And it is, you know, at least back then, very male dominated.
Yes, I've worked in newspapers too. I'll agree.
Yes. And so, you know, I think that we are starting to see waves of change. And that's not just in our industry. I think it's across the publishing industry as a whole. Women have now, like I kind of said, are now starting to have the confidence. We see other women doing it and we think, why can't I do that? I mean, let's try it. I mean, I know that, you know, I have good attention to detail and I know what I'm talking about. A lot of these women have some roots in the graphics industry. They've done some things. They know what they're talking about. So I think by having some women pave the way, it's opening the door for a lot more women to get involved. And we are starting to see that change, I think.
Oh, I think it's great. I mean, and I really, when I think about it, most of the people in the industry that I talk to about getting press or writing something or whatever it is are female, which is awesome, because I feel like women are more open to other women proposing things. And maybe, I mean, you know, not that I haven't had men support my ideas and things, but maybe it's just more comfortable. I don't know. Maybe it's less intimidating to propose an idea to another female. I don't know.
Yeah, that I mean, I think there's a lot of merit there, right? Because like you said, when I first started, I was a staff writer with Printwear. At the time, Emily Thompson was the editor, and you know, she was a huge you know, influence on my career and, you know, me wanting to do what I do. You know, she really coached me a lot and things like that. And not that any male editors never did, because I have had some fantastic role models, you know, male or female. But I do think there's something to be said for that, because, you know, a lot of the women we've seen a struggle or know what it's like to sort of be up against it. And so it's easier for us to encourage each other and really push each other and say, yes, you can succeed.
Well, and I think there's also, which you just touched on, and I think it's so true, there's a value in seeing women out there doing those jobs. So you can understand that if, like you said, if they can do it, I can do it. And I think that's why I'm so passionate in pushing women to get out and do videos and be speakers at trade shows and do all this stuff, because there are women coming up who need to see that, who need to know that all the experts are not, sorry guys, but are not old white guys.
Right. Right. We all come in different shapes and sizes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, representation is important, and we're going to talk about that a little later, but it's important for everybody. I mean, we need to see people of different ethnicities and men and women and we need to see everybody that's out there being an expert and sharing what they know. I think that's so important.
Yeah, and I do think that women sort of bring a really interesting creative edge to it as well. Just because we've been through so many different experiences, and so there's like sort of that, how do I want to say, feminine touch that we bring. So there's a good mix, and it really mixes well. And I think having, the female voice in there kind of adds, just really elevates content and things like that.
Well, especially with an industry where there are so many women who own businesses, who run businesses, who work in a business. I mean, this industry probably proportionally has more women than a lot of industries, I would think.
There are a lot, yes.
Yeah, so that's important too, is that, that they get represented, that, I want to talk to you though, because I was not aware that the March issue is women focused, which makes sense because that's Women's History Month is March. So that makes sense. But what kind of things will we see? Do you have any idea?
So, I mean, obviously the issue as a whole will carry a lot of the education across the board, like every issue does, right? The Women in the Industry feature was really a lot of fun because, like you said, there are a lot of women-owned businesses out there, or co-owned, or whatever. The really neat thing that I discovered while working on this feature was there were women in all sorts of roles. So some of the women we feature are owners of a business. Some of them are graphic designers. And artists, some of them are single, it's just them. Some of them work with really big organizations, and they do all sorts of different things. We've got women in there who do vehicle reps and who are, sand carvers. They do the glass art, things like that. So it really, what you're going to see is just this really amazing display of women just kind of doing everything in the graphics industry. My one regret is, man, there's so many women. Like, how do you choose to feature? Because then, I just got done interviewing this one lady in Maryland, and she's a woman-owned business. And it's really amazing because you're right. There is a huge amount of women out there who are doing this and owning businesses. And so, would
that be Allie Banholzer? Just curious.
No. Her name is Shanna Beach. But another one. See, so there you go. I mean, yeah. You can just kind of spout off all these women that you talk to, and even, hopefully someday when we're back at trade shows, you meet a lot of these women. So it's just a small way of us putting the spotlight on them and saying, hey, these women are out there and they're doing work. So I think all of our readers are really going to enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I love this issue, and I know Printware's done them in the past because I was in one, and I've always thought it was a really great idea, because I think it's important that the accomplishments of women get spotlighted, and kind of, hey, there's all these, like you said, there's so many amazing women that are kind of, I don't want to say toiling in obscurity because that sounds awful.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
And I think it's really important that we do place a spotlight, and we do make sure that these women's voices are getting heard. So I'm really, really, I applaud you guys for doing that. I'm really glad that you are doing that.
Absolutely. yeah, it was like I said, it was a lot of fun to talk to all these women and see what they're up to. So,
well, it's amazing to me since I've started doing this, the amount of variety that's out there. And I'm sure it's out there in the, with the men in the industry too, but the amount of ways that women have come to the industry and the backgrounds that they've had and the experiences that they've had and what they've, it's like every time we do this every Wednesday, there's a different story that comes out that I'm just often astonished by the things that people tell me.
Right. I know. And it's actually funny you bring that up. The woman I was just talking about, Shanna Beach in Maryland, she was in the Air Force, which I think is just unreal. I mean, mad respect to everyone who serves in any of the armed forces branches. But how crazy is it that, she went out, she served our country and then came back and started this thriving business. I mean, it takes a lot of ambition. So
she sounds like someone I should hit up to be on.
She's amazing
on the show. Well, I mean, that's one of the things that's been really fun is that everybody comes. I mean, I came to it from, I got a job. There was an ad in the local paper that said there was an embroidery company that was looking for a marketing director. And I was like, okay, I'll go talk to him, whatever. And I was thinking embroidery company, like 2 machines and, maybe a vinyl cutter or something. Not that I knew vinyl cutters at that time, and it turned out to be a national company with plants in 6 states and like 30 head machines, huge machines. And I was like, okay, I don't know. This is a world I did not know. And then you find out. So that's another fun thing is I think, like you said, there are women running single proprietor small shops in their garages or their she sheds or whatever, and doing really and doing gangbusters at it. And there are people running, shops with brick and mortar premises and employees, and I think that's one of the fun things of this industry is you can kind of make it what you want it to be.
Right. And there's really so much to be passionate about. So like you, I mean, I had just applied for a job here at NBM, and you don't realize the just like the extensiveness of this industry and, what it all entails and just the creativity everyone uses here and things like that. So it's been very fun getting to know everybody's stories, right? So yeah, really, really a neat one to be a part of.
It is. And it's also funny. I mean, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and I don't know if you've ever run an embroidery machine or pushed a screen or done whatever, but I run an embroidery machine once, and that's about the extent of my ability. I'm not a visual artist in any sense. I'm words totally. But people have accepted me as an expert and as someone who knows I've done a lot of hard work to get there. But I like that there doesn't seem to be any judgment about if you can come in and know your stuff. People will accept you on that level. There isn't a sense of, well, you have to go through these 5 levels and get these 6 titles and, and then you can be part of the thing,
Right. Yeah. And I can really see that you have pushed, right? And you push, not only the women in business topic, but just the education aspect. So, right, you can learn plenty about this by being exposed to it, talking about it, learning about it. The more you push, the more you learn. And that's a big thing that I've noticed that, the women here, especially just respect, is just the thirst for knowledge and thirst for education and the constant like push for something new and let's learn. It's just wonderful.
Well, and I have to say, for me, the work I did with printwear was a huge part of that, because you get assigned a story, you better figure out how to make it. So I'm very grateful because doing that work pushed me to go talk to people and say, how do you do this? What is the thing? What ideas do you have? All that kind of stuff. So I think that's one of the things that industry magazines, I mean, besides being an amazing source of education in general, they push you to explore new things and talk about why you do what you do. And I think that's a hugely valuable resource.
Oh, absolutely. You know, we like to talk to our readers, know what they're looking for, and we know the vast majority say they use Graphics Pro to learn about new products and to educate themselves about technical processes. I mean, it's not good enough to just sit with what you know. You got to go out and explore what you don't know. And yeah, that's a huge reason why we do what we do. We want to encourage that. We want to teach people.
Well, and the industry changes so much. There's always new equipment and new products and new processes. And if you kind of rest on your laurels and just, you know, you can fall behind really fast.
This is so true.
Scary. Well, that was always, I mean, what used to make me laugh when I was writing regularly was that I could come up with the same ideas were almost perennial. Like there's certain things that you could, but there was always a new way to approach it, because in the time since I'd last written about that particular thing, it was like, oh, this new thing came up, or there's this new way to do it, or some really clever person combined these two processes and made, you know, it's like, okay.
Oh yeah, and it's everything. I mean, it's the equipment, it's the process itself, it's the tools, it's the materials, it's the subject, it's everything. I mean, there's always something new.
Always something new. And I like this. Gosta is our resident Swedish viewer, and he says, what I see is that the women in the industry are often multi-talented. And I think that's so true. I mean, the number of shops that do multidiscipline work or multimedia work is just amazing.
Oh yeah, and to that point, that's actually interesting that he brings that up in the feature in our March issue, highlighting the women. I mean, these women aren't just the ones, you know, designing, or they're not just the one applying the wrap to a vehicle. I mean, they're doing a lot of it. They're doing the marketing, they're participating in group forums, they go on webinars, everything. I mean, so it's just like everyone's wearing a different hat, but they do it well. So.
And that, well, yeah, and that's the amazing thing. That, I mean, I told you a little bit about women in garment decoration, which I'm going to pop up just because I want to promote myself. Sorry, it's your interview, but I'm promoting the group. I want to pop that up. Women in garment decoration, for those of you that don't know, is a group for women in garment decoration, women only. If you're not a member, you should go join, because it's really awesome. But one of the things that I see there so frequently is women who are doing basically everything. I mean, you know, even if they're not one woman shops, they're doing a lot of it. And it's so, and the other thing that I just love is, I hate this word, but I'm going to say it anyway, the sisterhood of the industry. I hate that word. It feels, yeah, it's not the right word, but it's the only word I can think of. But I mean, the amount of knowledge and support and friendship that women offer to each other, and the way that they're working to lift other women up, I love that. I think it's so important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there used to be this stigma, and this is, you know, hence been shattered to pieces, but that women used to, you know, be catty and compete against each other. Yeah, I mean, there's still that competition, but it's a team competition. It's like, okay, I want to be better, but how can I build others up also in the process? How can we work together? You know, so I love your shameless promotion of your group, because it's just another way for women to network with each other and to go out there and make their voice heard, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. You know, it's just another platform to go out there and showcase what you're doing, ask questions, display your knowledge.
Well, Aaron Montgomery has a saying that he says quite frequently. Aaron's a good friend of mine, and he was actually instrumental in getting me started with the previous version of what became this. And he always says a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that's so true. And what I'm really loving is that women are learning what men, I think, kind of learn naturally as they grow up, which is how to network and how to support each other and how to give each other a leg up when they can. And unfortunately, I don't know that women were taught that as, I don't know if women absorb that. Like you said, there is that stereotype of, women are competing and women are catty and all this. And yes, there are women out there who are like that. But I think if you meet women who are running their own businesses and have their own goals and agendas, they don't have time to be catty or competitive because they have other stuff to do. And I almost said a bad word there, but I didn't. Well, you don't know me really well, so you don't know that I have a tendency to say words that I shouldn't say sometimes. But anyway.
Don't we all?
Yeah, we all do. But I think that's really my experience has been, and this is across the board, men, women, anybody. If you meet someone who has a goal and has drive and is trying to create something, they don't have time to be an asshole, basically. They're they're working on what they want to do, and some of the most talented, Eric Campbell's a really good example.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Incredibly talented guy, and the amount of time he spends on education, how he does about an hour and a half every week. Just I've done an hour just talking to the camera. It's hard.
Right. Oh no, I agree. And I think one of the things about Eric and the other people who are like him is you do see that work ethic sort of by proxy leads to helping other people. I mean, why else are you starting your new business? Why else are you looking to do these things if not to go out and help people? And I think that's, a lot of these women-owned businesses and the shops that we talk to, they did it because they had this need to like fulfill and help and like teach,
right.
Which is incredible, So yeah, you're right. Their goal is to just go out and just kick butt.
Well, and I think that's the amazing thing to me is the number of women, especially the number of women who are acknowledging that they have fears and they have concerns and they're unsure and they're still out there. I know a couple of women who started doing lives and who started, one actually started an entire podcast, and she was terrified to go on camera. And I talked her into doing this show, and then she did another show, and then it kind of snowballed. And I'm like, how much guts does that take to go, I'm going to do it but look what comes out of it.
Exactly. Something really beautiful and something that, a passion that she's good at. She didn't even probably really realize. And then she got some support, some boost, some experience, and then just took it and ran.
Yeah. And that's the thing that just blows me away is how many of these women are just taking the opportunities in front of them and just making something amazing of it. So I love it. And I really love this conversation, but I have something else that I really want to talk to you about. Okay. And I told you about this ahead of time, but you also write a blog, which I'm going to put up here. Blessed with Boys, and you have two adorable little boys, and you write about your experiences with them and what happens with them. And the things that boys say posts are great. I love those too. But you wrote a post, and I'm going to read some of it because I thought it was very, very interesting. So I'm going to start with this. My boys love Elsa and Anna. They love Mulan. In fact, we pretend we're fighting the Huns and protecting China in the backyard on a regular basis. And I see the confidence and strength in my boys growing. But don't you think it's okay to teach little boys the same values that we teach little girls? I'm not saying we teach them they are better than girls, that they must always be in charge. I want my boys to respect women, all races, all ethnicities, and treat them as equals, but at the same time, not to lose their own self-confidence and worth. And I'm skipping a paragraph here because the question at the end is, why can't Disney come up with a movie with a strong male character? One that shows all the little boys in the world that it's okay to be strong, confident, respectful, and yes, even emotional. Here's what I love about this. There's a lot I love about this, but one of the things that really struck me, and I said this to you when we were talking before the show too, is that this had never occurred to me. And I think a lot about how to raise empowered women and empowered men, because I think the equation doesn't work if only one side changes. Everybody has to change. So, but it never, I mean, I was totally on the Disney bandwagon with, oh, all the princesses that need to get rescued, that's so awful, and, you know, blah, blah, all that. But I never thought about it from the male point of view. But if you think of the male characters in Disney movies, they're, yeah, mostly they're Ken.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting because obviously Disney has movies with male leads, right? You think The Lion King, okay, right? Male lead, right? The movie Cars, male lead. The interesting thing is that a lot of times the male lead is either not human or is not put in any sort of position of power. So, and a lot of that has to do with Disney's history of Disney princesses and needing to revamp that, right?
Sure.
But when you look at the traditional classic Disney movie, the male role is just kind of secondary, right?
Right.
Which is great for women. And I think that, like I pointed out in my post, my kids are learning a lot of confidence from the female characters as well. Sure. But you're right. It takes two sides to make this work. If we're going to raise empowered women, we need to also raise empowered men.
Well, and I liked the part at the end where you say, can't there be a role model that shows boys that they can be strong, confident, respectful, and emotional? And I think emotional is huge because women are dinged a lot for being too emotional. And if you ever, and when I mean, this made me think so much, I have to say, because one of the things that I started thinking about was when I see a man being emotional in a movie or a TV show, how is that treated? And usually it's treated as though he's weak, or as though it's something to make fun of, or it's something to kind of go, oh, well, this isn't a man, you know? And that really, it had, again, another thing that hadn't occurred to me. So I want to talk about that for a minute. So your boys are, if I remember correctly, 5 and 6
and 3. 5 and 3.
5 and 3. Okay, I was off a little bit. Fine. But I mean, so they're just really starting to learn what it means to be a boy, let alone what it means to be a man.
Right. Yep.
So, I mean, and when you're a little kid, little boy or little girl, you cry, you get mad, you throw fits, you do all that stuff. And nobody, but even at that age, you know, I can remember, my sister has boys, and I can remember older members of the family telling my nephews, don't cry.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, and so I think, I guess the question is, I mean, I guess it has to start with the family, that the family has to tell little boys that it's okay to be sad and it's okay to cry. And it's okay even as you get older.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things my husband and I are very adamant about. Like, it's okay to acknowledge your feelings. If something makes you sad, it's okay to be like, you know what? Yep, I'm sad about that. Like, this makes me sad. My 5-year-old is a pretty emotional child. He has a bleeding heart. So when he watches a movie that has a particularly emotional scene in it, he will cry. And I tell him that it's okay to feel sad. Like, it's okay to feel that emotion because it means you're making a connection. And it doesn't mean you're less tough. And it doesn't mean that you're weak. And it doesn't mean you're, quote unquote, an emotional person. It just means you have a feeling.
Right.
And you've made a connection. I mean, we just tell him simply, yep, totally okay to feel that way. And that's not just even with sad. It's okay. You know, we tell him sometimes when his little brother completely destroys the Lego castle that he's built and he's angry, you know, we're like, yep, it's okay to be angry. You can feel angry. You can't hit your brother, right? But it's okay.
You can't pound your brother like you want to, but
right. But it's okay to feel those emotions. It's okay because it just means you're human. It means you've made a connection. You feel something. So.
Right. And I think that's, well, I mean, speaking as someone who is as close as last night was crying at the end of the repair shop because somebody was happy with their refurbished item. I'm like, I totally get your son because I have one of those too. I'm the person that cries at, oh, she loves her toy. Oh, one of those. But I also think the other thing, and it's a question that, since we were talking about, role models for women, mm-hmm. and role models for young women, I also think there need to be role models of the behavior that we'd like to see from men for mm-hmm. young boys. And I think that's a harder, like you as you said in your piece, and I didn't read this paragraph, but the Me Too movement and a lot of things that have happened have really put the focus on how women are treated and mm-hmm. role models for women and female empowerment, and all that's awesome. Mm-hmm. But we're missing the other half of the equation.
Right. And that's like a big thing in our house, because it's not just dad being role model to little boy, and, not in our house, but mom being role model to little girl. It's right. Mom and dad, or whoever, partner and partner, being role models to your kids. So when my sons see my relationship with my husband, they see an equal partnership. I'm right. not the one just doing dishes and doing laundry. It's not just me, fulfilling mm-hmm. the proverbial woman role, and dad fulfilling the typical go to work and only come home to tell you goodnight kind of thing. It's like all of us working as a unit. And that teaches them, like, hey, my mom's a strong, tough woman, and she goes out and she has a career and she gets it done, but she does come home and cook me dinner because she loves me. Dad's a tough guy and he's taught me how to swing a baseball bat, but you know what? He also tells me it's okay to feel sad at the end of a really good movie. And so, like, I think that we have to stop saying women have to just teach women, and men just have to teach men, and be like, no, right. Little boys can learn from women and men. Little girls can learn from women and men. And mm-hmm. and we all together have to teach the right, values that we want our kids to have.
Well, let me ask you this, because I'll admit, I'm guessing we were raised in different generations, because I'm 52 and I know you're not. So I was raised in my mother always worked, had a very good job, but my mom was raised with the idea that a woman needed a man. You had to have a man. And my father basically thought women were good for cooking, cleaning, and sex, pretty much. And, if you didn't fit into one of those categories, then you probably weren't. But that was also very typical of, I was born in 1969, so I was raised in the 1970s and the 1980s. So I'm guessing probably when you were raised, the messages were a little different.
Yeah. So my mom worked until, so I'm the oldest, and I have 4 younger brothers. So, okay. So my mom worked until my second brother was born. And then just because the sheer amount of children that wound up in our family, she ended up just being a stay-at-home mom. But by no means did that mean my dad wasn't going to help out around the house. Mm-hmm. I mean, my dad showed up to track meets. My dad helped my mom do dishes. He would get up early in the morning to help make breakfast, things like that, and so I saw, when I was growing up, an equal partnership mm-hmm. where each spouse mattered. And it had nothing to do with male, female. It had everything to do with, how do we successfully raise these children so that they're good humans when they go out into the world.
Yeah, that's important.
Right. And that was a big deal. And my mom, I tell her all the time, I do not know how she did it. I have 2 kids, 2 boys, and I can't even keep track of them or what's going on. The fact that she successfully raised 5 children, still worked part of the time. She even went back to work when most of us were still in the house, living in the house and young. I mean, kudos, because that's like a beacon of strength. And like, that's what that really gave me the empowerment to go out and be like, you know what? Yep. If she can do that, I can do whatever, I can do what it is I want to do.
So, it's very true. Well, I think what happens is you either rebel against what you grew up with, or you totally become that. Now, I have a younger sister. She, from the time she was very young, was like, I want to get married. I want to live in the country. I want to have babies, and I want to have puppies and kittens, and that's what I want to do. And that's what she did. She got married. She had 3 kids. She had puppies and kittens, and her house was the neighborhood fun house. And I was like, I don't want children. I want to have a career. I don't, so I think it's interesting what you take away from what you grew up with. And I never really saw the partnership aspect of it, which I think is so important, because I think when you're growing up, if you see a good model for a relationship, that really helps, especially for how a guy should be if you're raising boys. But
and it's so funny because my husband says that all the time. He's like, you guys, you need to learn how to treat women right. He's like, you want to find a good woman in your life, if that's your path and that's what you want to find, you better learn to respect her as an equal partner. And he's like, even in general, he's like, you better learn to treat women right. And I think that's huge. Whatever the path we choose, if we want to, whatever it is we choose, we just preach support, support and help and work together, so.
Well, I think that's an interesting thing too. And I want to touch on this a little bit. We're having a kind of a sociological discussion. I think this is important because, again, what I was raised to expect from a partner, like you say, your husband's telling your boys now at 5 and 3, if you want to have a good relationship and if you want to have a good woman in your life, you've got to know how to respect her. And I was raised that, he's probably not going to treat you that well, but you need one. I would say, no.
No, I mean, no, not necessarily. There are plenty of women who are doing it on their own just fine. You know what I mean? And then there are plenty of women who have a partner and they're doing just fine. So I think that goes to speak to, the kind of, again, circling back to what we very first were talking about, the women having the confidence to go out and find what they love and what, have confidence in doing it.
To make the life that because I mean, I've never found my prince, and I have come to be, this is my life, and I don't feel like it would be lovely, but it didn't happen. And thank God, because I had really bad taste in men when I was young. So I'm so glad I didn't end up with one of them. But I mean, and I laugh about it now, but I think there's this, I like that there's this effort now to frame the relationship conversations differently for kids who are coming up now.
Absolutely.
Because, especially the partnership aspect of it, and I mean, I think anybody who's ever been in any kind of relationship knows that it's never 50-50. But
it swings.
Yeah, it swings. But I mean, and the whole thing of the fact that, like you were talking about the Disney characters, that your boys love Elsa and they love Mulan and they love Anna and they love all this. And I'm thinking, you don't have to. That's another great thing that I think kids are learning nowadays that maybe they didn't learn before, was that you don't have to identify with the character. You don't have to love the prince just because the prince is the guy.
Exactly.
That you can be attracted to the character that's being the leader, or the character that's being the caretaker, or whatever it is. And it doesn't matter the sex of that character or the gender of that character. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
It's getting me riled up a little bit, but when I saw that, I just thought, this is such an important discussion. And I told you, prior to us starting, that I had a similar discussion with my Rebufka 3 or 4 weeks ago, and she's raising girls. And I just feel, I mean, on one hand, I'm so excited for the kids coming up now, because I think they won't have some of the they won't have to unlearn some of the things that maybe someone my age had to unlearn. But at the same time, there's probably new things that they're gonna,
Aren't there always, right?
Yeah, well, and I think it is, because at the end of the day, even if you're focused on looking at women as equals and partners or men as equals and partners, there's still differences in how we look at the world and how we experience relationships and how other people look at us and all that kind of stuff. So it's still going to be a balancing act, but
yeah, absolutely. And one of the great things is we can have the discussion, right? So you can always like talk about it. There are just so many platforms these days. Like I said, like I use the blog. I like to talk about generally funny things that they do, but occasionally bring up these tough, topics. Just because sometimes maybe we don't know how to talk about it with our kids, or we're wondering what was done, or, just networking. Again, networking, learning from each other, talking about it, having that open discussion, I think is wildly important.
I agree. I think that's one of the reasons that I talk about some of the stuff that I've talked about in the past, is because there's a lot of things we don't talk about. And particularly as women, sometimes we don't. I mean, I did a show, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago on sexual abuse and sexual harassment. And that's something we don't talk about. And I think it's so, and because we don't talk about it, it has so much more power than if we were saying, this happened to me, or this was my experience, or whatever it was. So I think that's something I want to do more of. Honestly, I really aspire at some point to, when trade shows get back together, to find a trade show network that would be interested in doing some panel discussions or something like that. Because I think the more that we put this information out there and start talking about how do we raise boys, and how do we raise empowered boys, and how do we raise empowered girls, and how do we give them the tools to make the right choices in the future, because these are the kids that are going to be running things in,
right
20, 30 years. And we want to be. So I loved that post that you wrote. And I think that it's such an important topic that I wanted to address it here, because I really do think and I mean, plus the fact that 2 little boys at those ages, my goodness.
The energy level, like, I mean, we could have them run for an hour straight, and an hour later they would be back to just like full blown energy. Like, I mean, there are days where I make them just go out in our yard to run laps, and I'm like, or we work out together. So, a lot of times, like, my kids and I will do a little kid workout or do like kids yoga or something like that. But yeah, you got to get creative with getting that energy out.
Well, the kids yoga thing, I wanted to ask you, can you get them to do yoga?
There's this really cool program called Cosmic Yoga. And they do like kid themed, very short stuff. So like you'll tell the story of Anna and Elsa through yoga. And so then it like engages them, because they're kind of like talking about things they know. But yeah, generally about 20 minutes is if I'm lucky, is the max I get out of them for that, but that's all right. Then they just go wrestle and we're good.
Well, I mean, I applaud that I do yoga and love it, but I can't imagine getting a young child of any gender to do yoga on a regular basis. And I mean, kids are crazy, man.
They are.
But, oh my goodness. But I really did want to talk about that, because I thought it was really an important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like this.
Yeah.
Jenny says, I have 3 boys, and my youngest 2 love to do yoga with me, ages 19 and 15. Very cool.
Love that. And that's kind of what I'm kind of hoping, like maybe in the future we can share these awesome things together, and someday they'll be able to, be still long enough to do it. So.
Well, I mean, as kids grow up, their attention spans get longer and their ability, and if they've been used to it, then that would, that would be something that they would be able to do on a regular basis. But like I said, I love this post. I love that you brought that up because I think it's so important that we talk about these issues.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do. And I think that's one thing that I try to encourage all the time. And I like that, magazines and trade shows and all that stuff are putting venues out there where people can talk about the things that are concerning them or that they're excited about or that they want to learn about. So in the group that you guys have for Graphics Pro, let me ask you this. What are the topics that you're seeing in there? Are people concerned about, what's the pandemic and what's happening with that? Are they pivoting to make things work? Are they excited about new equipment?
It's everything. So yeah, I mean, I guess not, less a group, more of like a page, right? But we get discussion, and a lot of what we share on that is education, because we know that's primarily what people are coming to us for, is the education. But certainly we've seen our fair share of discussion, obviously, about the pandemic, right? That's the topic top of mind for everybody. For the most part, people, obviously we've seen our fair share of hurt, and there's been their fair share of effects. But we've also seen just this massive amount of success from people who were able to readjust and pivot and learn new things, right? So it almost forced them, if you will, to go out and learn new things. So we've seen this massive increase of people asking each other questions, right? So how are you doing this? What are you doing for this? And the willingness to share that education has been unreal. I mean, the amount of people that have even just reached out to me and said, I really want to write an article on this, or I think you guys should do tips about this, or what if we talked about this? That's great. And it's because people they have the need to go out and share, and we're the platform to help. So that's what you see a lot of, is just sharing, networking, lots of education.
So. And I think that's so great. And I'm going to throw up the Graphics Pro URL again so people can see it, because I think one of the things that people really need right now is resources, places where they can go and connect and get information and figure out how to pivot and how to learn new things and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this has been such an upside down. I mean, just crazy.
It's interesting.
Well, it's really, I mean, I think this is something that, for most of us, well, probably for all of us that are alive right now, it's something we've never experienced in our, in our lifetimes. I mean, it's just the number of people that have gotten sick and the number of people that have died, and the challenges that have been placed in front of businesses, and how do you handle that?
Right.
So I think, what Graphics Pro and the other magazines are doing is really giving people a forum to talk about things, and also helping them figure out what to do, which I think is so valuable. And I'm really looking forward to the March issue, and I will definitely keep an eye out for that, because I think that's really going to be, well, I'll be honest, I like that you're doing a whole issue, an issue that's majority female focused.
And it's and looking ahead even to the future, to kind of backtrack a little bit, we do expect to see another major shift. In talking to a lot of shops, they expect to see again this major shift. So there's a lot of uncertainty, obviously, but that's kind of one of the things we're trying to focus on too, is like, hey, like, prepare yourselves, like, be ready, be flexible, learn new technologies. How can you capitalize on this area? Like, home decor is obviously incredibly popular right now. But in talking to a lot of these shops, that's why many of them were able to survive and even actually do well. There's one shop I was talking to in New York that said their sales are actually their 2020 sales surpassed 2019, simply because they were able to adjust so quickly on the spot. So it's been really amazing to see that shift. And we want to kind of continue to be part of that and give people the platform to move with it as things continue to change.
Well, and I think that's just putting the stories out there about the shops that have successfully managed too, because I know there are a lot of people who got into this and went, crap, what do I do? And how do I, and maybe I can't, and this looks really dire, and, I'm scared of it. And it's always helpful to have, like role models, like we were talking about earlier. Right. Always helpful to have the examples out there of people who have done it well. And I'm the same as you. I have heard stories of people who have really done well or have pivoted and started doing something new, and it turned out to be a great experience. And I have heard from people who are really struggling and are scared and don't know, how they're gonna come out of this and whether they're going to come out of it well.
Yeah. So, and we hope to kind of help with that, right? So it's not just the print magazine. I mean, it's our newsletter. It's our our online trade events that we do called the breakaway sessions. And fingers crossed, it's the in-person trade shows that we're going to host later this year. I mean, the more you can go out and learn, and hopefully that will give you the tools to turn that corner and keep the business alive.
Let me just circle back to something, because we got just a few more minutes here, but you mentioned the breakaway sessions a couple of times, and I know this is basically the NBM shows going online kind of, but the focus is more education. Am I off? Am I right?
No, you're on the right track. So last year, obviously, with all of the in-person trade shows getting shut down, we were quick to launch the breakaway sessions, which were like a virtual trade show. But obviously, like you said, focused on education. So we still had, participating equipment vendors and things like that, so that people could still see the new equipment. Because obviously, if we're going to educate them about the new processes and the new, techniques, they're going to need new equipment, right? And so we offered that, and it's basically an online event for people to go and learn all they can about different topics. So like our first one this year is going to be about software, which we find like design and software is a big challenge for a lot of these businesses, right? So again, it's just creating that platform, providing more avenues for education, more ways for people to interact with us as well.
Well, and I also have to say, I admire the magazines and the trade show companies and the people that have learned to pivot and still get the content and the education out to people in new ways. I mean, I'm sure you guys were as freaked out as everybody else when suddenly your events went, pancaked, basically.
Absolutely. We were, because there's so much uncertainty when something like that happens. But we knew, it's a goal of our whole team. It's a personal goal, but a whole team goal. Like, we can't stop what we're doing. We just can't. So
well, and I mean, you really can't, because you have to keep the income coming in too. That's hard to do that. But I mean, just from the standpoint of, the magazines and the trade shows are the industry's linchpin in a way. I mean, it's where people go to make connections. It's where they go to learn things, So you're right. You can't. You must keep going.
Right.
No matter what.
That's right.
We're almost at the end here, so I'm going to pop up your email one more time, just because I want to encourage all of you, but especially the women who are watching, if you have a good idea for a story, if you have something you're proud of that you'd like to share, email Cassie and let her know, because there's a good crew over there at NBM and at Graphics Pro, and they will help us get the messages out there that we want to get out there. I'm co-opting you, by the way.
No, I it's great, because like we said, I mean, I love hearing the stories. I love sharing the stories. I love providing a way to share them. We're all in this together. And yes, I love talking to the other women in the industry, because it's inspirational for me to see what they're doing. And like you said, oftentimes in conversation, you learn things that you never thought
You never knew.
ever pick up. So
Yeah,
it's amazing. I really encourage it.
definitely. Well, thank you very much for being here with me today. We have hit our hour mark, and even though we could go on for longer, I have learned that when I hit the hour, I have to stop, or we go to 2. And the longest I ever did was 2.5, but that was with Erin, and that's like really too long. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
I'm going to pop you out and say goodbye to everybody, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you, Cassie. But before you go, great job, Cassie. It's not easy to raise good humans in this crazy world. I love that. Thank you, Rena, for watching today and for commenting. All right. Thanks, Cassie.
Thank you.
Ah, that was so fun. I love these conversations. They're so great. And I just have to say thank you to Gusta, who said, just have to say, love your new background, Christine. It lifts the impression. Good job. So thank you, Gusta. I like the new background too. I think it's fun. And thank you to Carolyn Cagle, who helped me figure out the new background. I appreciate it. So that's it for today. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for watching. I love you all for taking some time to spend it with me and Cassie today. And I will be back next week with another great guest, and I'm so excited. Thanks, guys. You have a good rest of the day.